In the heart of an ancient temple, under the watch of 1,000 eyes, a mighty dragon lay chained, moments away from being sacrificed. But just the blade was about to fall, a young orphan boy stepped forward, daring to challenge tradition with nothing but his courage and a secret only he could see. What happened next would change their world forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The Temple of Solera was silent except for the sound of chains. In the center of the stone hall, a dragon named Cyrinth lay bound. Her black scales glowed under the blue lantern light, and her great chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. A wound marked her left shoulder, spreading with a dull red glow like fire under glass. The Thari people had gathered in the temple. Tall and graceful, their silver skin shimmered like moonlight. They were not here to celebrate. They were here to perform a sacrifice. The Thari had lived with dragons for generations. They spoke to them with the mind, and together they had built cities, farms, and songs that filled the skies. But when the dragons fell sick, their thoughts turned violent. The Thari called it the noise. It made once gentle creatures into storms of rage. The Archseer, Marvek, stood before the crowd. He carried a ceremonial blade carved from the horn of the first dragon, ever bonded to the Thari. His voice was calm, but it carried power across the hall. He said the ritual must be done. If Cyrinth was not released, her rage would destroy more villages. Many nodded. They had lost families, homes, and peace to corrupted dragons. The crowd whispered and watched the dragon. Cyrinth's eyes glowed amber, but pain made them wild. Chains held her wings tight, and her head rested low against the stone. Each time she pulled, sparks flickered along the magical links. In the shadows, behind a broken column, a boy named Jory Hale watched. He was 12 years old and human, not Thari. His parents had died when their ship crashed on Solera 4 years ago. The Thari had taken him in, but he never felt like he belonged. He had no telepathic gifts. He was shorter, rougher, and treated as a servant in the temple. Jory had spent weeks sneaking near the dragon pens. While others felt only chaos from Cyrinth's mind, he had noticed something different. When he brought her food or water, her eyes calmed. When he whispered, she watched him with curiosity instead of hate. He saw pain in her, not corruption. The Archseer raised the blade high. The blue light of the lanterns seemed to grow brighter. The moment had come. Without thinking, Jory ran. His sandals slapped the floor, echoing like a drum. The Thari gasped as the boy leapt between the dragon and the Archseer. "Please, wait!" Jory shouted, his voice shaking. The dragon's eyes snapped open and fixed on him. Her pupils widened, and the chains rattled as her muscles tensed. Still, she did not strike. The Archseer lowered the blade a little. His pale eyes studied the child. "This is not your concern," he said firmly. "Stand aside. You do not understand our ways." Jory's chest rose and fell fast, but he forced the words out. "I do understand. You're wrong about Cyrinth. She isn't cursed. She's sick. Look at the wound. The mark doesn't spread from her heart. It spreads from that injury. It's an infection. The hall erupted in whispers. Some laughed at the boy's words. Others frowned and looked closer at the wound. Jory continued, his voice desperate. Last season there was a meteor shower. My parents studied such things. They said falling rocks can carry living dust, the kind that infects creatures. This looks the same. My parents taught me how infections spread. This isn't corruption. It's illness. An elder stepped forward. Dragons cannot be brought low by sickness, she said sharply. The boy tries to delay the rite. Jory shook his head. Then let me prove it. Give me 3 days. If I fail, you can continue. But if I am right, you save her. You save all of us. The Arcseer's eyes did not leave the boy. The hall went quiet again. Finally, Marvik lowered the blade fully. 3 dawns, he said. If you fail, the sacrifice will go on. A wave of surprise ran through the Thari. Keeper Nyama, the dragon warden, stepped closer. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed a spark of hope. The crowd began to leave, murmuring with doubt and curiosity. The dragon stayed still, her gaze locked on the boy who had stood in her defense. Jory walked closer, slowly, his hand trembling. He reached out and touched the edge of a scale near her neck. The surface burned with fever heat, but she did not pull away. I'll come back, he whispered. I'll help you. Siren's eyes followed him as he stepped back. Her chains rattled once, then grew still. The Arcseer placed the ceremonial blade onto its stand. His voice carried one last warning. 3 days, human child. If the sickness remains, the rite will finish. Jory nodded, his heart pounding but filled with determination. He turned and ran toward the night path, where the broken wreck of his parents' ship still waited. He would need their tools. He would need their knowledge. And he would need every ounce of courage to face what came next. The night air was cool as Jory Hale left the temple. His steps carried him quickly along the ancient path that wound through the hills outside the city of the Thari. The stars glowed above him, sharp and endless, and the pale moonlight revealed the long scar of twisted metal resting in the valley below. This was the wreck of his parents' research vessel, the place where his old life had ended and his new life had begun. The boy's heart beat fast, not only from the climb, but from the weight of what he had promised. 3 days to prove the dragon was sick, not cursed. 3 days to find answers where no one else believed answers existed. The wreck loomed ahead like a broken beast, its ribs of steel still rising against the sky. The hull had been left untouched by the Thari, who valued only precious metals and energy cells. The rest, strange to them, was abandoned to time and dust. But to Jory, every broken corridor was familiar. It was the last place his parents had breathed, and it held the only tools that might save Sirenth. He slipped inside through a gap in the hull, the metal cold under his hands. Shadows filled the narrow corridor, and dust coated the walls like a blanket of forgotten years. His small lantern cast a soft glow as he whispered, almost like a prayer, "Mom, Dad, I'm here." The boy's steps led him to the laboratory. Cracked screens and shattered glass covered the floor. Yet in the center of the room, ... a portable scanner rested in its case, still intact. He lifted it with care, brushing away the dust. The device's screen flickered once before fading. The power cell was empty, but Jory smiled with relief. "If it can light once, it can light again," he whispered. Beside the scanner lay a small field kit, neatly packed by his father's careful hands years ago. Inside were vials of medicine, tools for taking samples, and a sleek injector built to pierce even the thickest scales. The sight filled Jory with both hope and grief. The memory of his parents' steady voices and gentle teaching returned, reminding him of lessons about bacteria, infection, and healing. With trembling hands, he gathered the kit and scanner, tucking them into a cloth sack. The weight felt heavy, but it was the kind of heavy that carried meaning. He left the wreck and began the walk back to the temple, his eyes glancing often to the stars, when fire streaked across the sky and changed everything. By dawn, Jory reached the outer walls of the temple. Keeper Naima waited there, her tall form wrapped in a pale cloak. She had seen something in the boy's eyes the night before, something worth trusting. She handed him a small fairy power cell. "This will help your device," she said softly. "Make it work again." Inside the dragon's chamber, the air was heavy with tension. Sirinth lay bound, her chest rising with labored breaths, her great eyes following every movement. One guard remained, watching the human boy with suspicion. Jory connected the fairy cell to the scanner with a bit of wire and a quiet prayer. The screen came alive, green squares blinking steadily. He bowed to the dragon, his voice calm but firm. "It will not hurt much. I need to see what is inside your wound." The scanner passed over her shoulder, humming softly. Shapes appeared on the screen, glowing patterns that showed the heat spreading outward from the cut. "See," Jory said, turning to Naima. "It begins at the wound, not the heart. It spreads like infection, not like the curse they fear." Naima's silver eyes narrowed as she studied the image. She did not speak, but her silence carried respect. Jory prepared a swab and carefully touched the edge of the wound. Sirinth rumbled low in her chest, chains clattering, but she did not strike. "Easy," the boy whispered. "I'm trying to help." He placed the sample into the analyzer from the field kit. Lights flickered, forming tiny rows of data. His voice grew steady as he read. "Foreign bacteria. It thrives in heat. It spreads fast, but it can be stopped." The guard shook his head. "Dragons do not fall to illness." Jory did not answer him. Instead, he opened a vial marked with a blue ring. His father had told him it was a broad-spectrum treatment, safe for many scaled creatures. "This is worth trying," he murmured. He cleaned the wound carefully, his hands shaking, then used the injector to deliver the first dose. Sirinth roared low, her body straining against the chains. The guard stepped forward, but Naima lifted her hand. "Wait," she said. "Look." The dragon's breathing slowed. The glow of the wound dimmed just slightly. And though her eyes still burned with pain, she kept them locked on the boy, as though searching for meaning in his courage. Jory placed a cooling patch of medicine over the wound. Steam rose, and the red light weakened again. He smiled faintly, exhaustion already tugging at him. "We will need 3 days," he whispered, "but this can work." As the sun rose higher, Arkseer Marvek entered. He studied the boy, the tools, and the dragon. "What does your device tell you now?" he asked. "That she is not cursed," Jory answered firmly. She is sick, and sickness can be healed. The hall fell silent. Marvek did not argue. Instead, he nodded slowly and said, "2 dawns remain. Prove it." Jory bent once more to Sirinth, resting his hand on her warm scales. "You're not alone," he whispered. "We can fight this together." The second morning broke with gray skies and soft rain. The temple of Celera smelled of wet stone, and drops of water slipped down the tall pillars. Inside the chamber, the dragon Sirinth stirred against her chains. Her breath came slower than the night before, but the wound on her shoulder still burned with a faint red glow. Jory Hale knelt by her side, holding the small scanner he had repaired. His eyes were heavy with lack of sleep, but he kept going. Each reading showed the fever dipping and then climbing again. It was a battle, not a quick cure. He whispered softly as he worked, not sure if Sirinth understood his words, but sure that his calm voice mattered. "You're stronger than this sickness," he told her. "We'll fight it together." Keeper Naima stayed nearby, her hands ready with clean water and cloths. She had seen many rituals, but never a child standing in place of a priest. She watched closely as Jory prepared a second dose from the field kit. The vial glowed faintly blue in the lantern light. When he injected the medicine, Sirinth tensed, chains rattling against the stone floor. The guard stepped forward, ready to tighten the restraints, but Naima raised her hand. "Wait," she said. "Listen to her." The dragon gave a low growl, but it was not rage. It sounded more like pain being lifted, slowly, piece by piece. The glow of the wound dimmed slightly once again. By midday, the temple elders arrived to see the progress for themselves. They whispered among one another, their long robes brushing the floor as they circled the platform. One elder, Sela, leaned in close to study the wound. Her sharp eyes noticed the change. "The red fades," she said quietly. "Perhaps the boy is right." Jory showed them the readings on the scanner. The heat around the wound had dropped since the first night. It was not gone, but it was weaker. "The sickness is losing," he explained. "But I need 1 more day, maybe 2. The elders murmured, torn between old traditions and the sight before them. They had prepared for sacrifice, but now they stood in front of hope. As the afternoon wore on, the sky darkened with a storm. Thunder rolled over the hills, and lightning struck near the city walls. The temple lights flickered, and the scanner gave a warning beep. Its battery was low. Panic touched Jory's face for the first time. Without the scanner, he could not measure the progress, and the council would not believe his word alone. Naima hurried to the storage hall and returned with a small crank-towered device used to light festival lamps. "Try this," she said. Jory connected the wires, and together they turned the crank until their arms burned. Slowly, the scanner lit again. The boy exhaled with relief. That night was long and restless. The fever rose sharply, and Sirinth thrashed against her bonds, her great wings straining at the chains. The guard shouted that the ritual must continue, but Jory ran to the dragon's head, pressing both hands to her warm scales. "Breathe with me," he whispered. "Just breathe. You are not alone." To everyone's surprise, Sirinth stilled. Her chest rose and fell with his rhythm. Her amber eyes fixed on him, tired but focused. Slowly, the fever eased again, though it did not vanish. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. Jory's body ached with exhaustion, but the scanner showed a new result. The infection had weakened more than before. It was still there, still dangerous, but now the pattern bent downward. Arcseer Marvik entered the chamber. His robe was damp from the storm, and his face unreadable. He stood over the dragon, then turned his eyes to Jory. "What does your device tell you today?" he asked. Jory lifted the scanner. "The sickness is retreating. The fever is lower than yesterday. If we give one more treatment, she can heal." Marvek studied the boy's weary face, the dragon's calmer breathing, and the numbers on the screen. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed his head towards Sirinth, a gesture of respect not given lightly. The elders whispered again, but this time their voices carried wonder instead of anger. Jory replaced the patch on the dragon's wound and prepared the final dose. His voice was quiet, steady. "We're close. Hold on." As the day faded, Sirinth moved her wings slightly, not with fury, but as if remembering the sky. The chains clinked softly. The boy looked up at her and whispered, "Soon you'll be free." That night, the chamber was filled with silence. No roaring, no violent pulling at the chains. Just a dragon, resting, and a boy keeping watch, determined to see the final dawn through. The third dawn arrived with a quiet, unlike any before. The temple of Celira glowed softly as sunlight streamed through tall windows, touching the dragon's Sirinth with golden light. Her great body no longer trembled with fever. Her breaths came steady, and the red glow around her wound had faded to a faint scar. Jory Hale sat beside her, his eyes heavy but bright with hope. He had worked through the nights, using his parents' tools, his own courage, and the trust Sirinth had slowly given him. Now, as the final treatment took hold, he felt the battle was almost won. Keeper Naima entered first. She stopped in surprise at the sight before her. The dragon's chains lay loose, not from force, but from stillness. Sirinth no longer pulled in anger. Instead, her amber eyes followed the boy with calm attention. Naima whispered, "The sickness truly weakens." The temple filled with people, elders, guards, and priests gathered to see the outcome. Arcseer Marvek walked slowly to the center, his expression stern but thoughtful. He studied the dragon, then turned to the boy. "What does your device tell you now?" Jory held up the scanner. "The sickness has nearly gone. The fever is low. She is healing." A murmur spread through the hall. The crowd had expected rage, perhaps failure, but not this. Sirinth lifted her head, the chains clinking softly. For the first time in weeks, her mind was quiet. The Thari could sense it. Not storm, not chaos, but peace. Marvek stepped closer to the dragon. He raised his hand, not with a blade, but with respect. Then, before the gathered crowd, he bowed. This creature was not cursed. She was in pain. The boy has shown us truth. The hall fell silent. The weight of tradition pressed on everyone. Yet the sight of the dragon, alive and calm, spoke louder than any ritual. One by one, elders lowered their heads. Keeper Naima smiled faintly, her silver eyes bright with relief. "We must learn," she said softly. ... Healing comes before judgment. Marvek placed his hand on the release wheel and turned it. One chain fell away. then another, until all restraints lay silent on the stone floor. Sirinth did not roar or strike. Instead, she slowly lowered her head toward Jory. The boy froze, his breath caught in his chest. The dragon's massive forehead touched his shoulder, holding there, warm and steady. A low sound rose from her chest, not anger, but a deep, gentle hum. The Thari called it a ground bond, a rare vow when a dragon chose a companion not of its kind. Gasps filled the hall. Naima whispered, "She accepts him, not as master, but as equal." Jory's hand trembled as he placed it on her cool scales. His voice was soft. "You're free now. But if you want, we can walk this path together." Sirinth's eyes gleamed. She pulled back and looked toward the wide terrace where the morning sky waited. With a powerful push, she spread her wings. Air rushed through the chamber as she leapt onto the terrace. For a moment, she hovered, sunlight flashing across her scales, then circled high above the city. The people ran to the edge to watch. Children pointed, elders whispered, and even the guards lowered their weapons. The dragon's shadow passed over the streets, not as a threat, but as a promise. Jory stood on the terrace, the wind tugging at his clothes, his heart racing. He feared she might fly away forever, but Sirinth turned in a wide arc and descended again. She landed gently, crouching low, as if inviting him to climb. Naima touched his shoulder. "Sometimes trust is the greatest gift," she said. "Take it." With careful steps, Jory climbed onto Sirinth's back. Her wings rose again, and together they lifted into the open sky. The city below cheered as the pair soared over rooftops and rivers. It was not just flight. It was proof that fear could give way to hope. When they landed, Marvek spoke to the crowd. "Our ways must change. We will no longer call pain a curse before seeking its cause. From this day, healing will come before sacrifice. We will listen before we judge." Elder Sella recorded the words on a slate and pressed it into the temple's wall, carving a new vow into their history. Jory slid down from Sirinth's back. He was tired, his clothes worn, but his spirit felt larger than ever. He looked at the dragon, then at the people. "She was never untamable," he said softly. "She only needed someone to see her pain." That night, the temple held no ritual of sorrow. Instead, a new lamp was lit at its entrance, a symbol of healing. Travelers would one day look to that light for comfort. Sirinth rested near the terrace, under the silver moon, unchained, at peace. Jory lay close by, with the scanner and field kit beside him. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, promising new beginnings. The boy had saved a dragon, but more than that, he had changed a world.